Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. I am your host and producer. My name is James Pagashnik. Thank you so much for listening. And on the other end of the tin can and string, we have our analyst and co-host. He is a blogger for many different areas around the internet. He also works with the Daily Norseman along with Cold Omaha. He is a generally useful human, and he is our man on the ground, our eyes in the sky, our boots on the ground over at training camp.
I'm your motion in the ocean. No.
That's terrible. I'm keeping it in, though. Arif Hassan. Arif, how you doing?
I'm good.
You're so many things at training camp.
Stretching myself a little thin.
Just a little bit. So I haven't been on in a while, and how are things? How have you and Dusty?
Who am I talking to?
Exactly.
Who is this?
How have you and Dusty been getting along? You know, I've been editing the shows, but you know me, I prefer just to be not heard, but just have an effect on the show in some way, shape, or form. I haven't been on in a while. It's time. It's time for me to come back. It's also coincidentally time for Dusty to go on a brief hiatus. Although this time it's not because of his computer.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it's very positive. It sounds like there's an NDA involved, but not for him, for who he's with. He seems to be enjoying himself.
Anytime that Dusty can be away and it's not because of his computer dying, but there's still...
Or becoming a fugitive.
Yeah, or becoming a fugitive. And there's a non-disclosure agreement involved. Like, how can you argue against that? So... Kudos to that. To those who have not been around for me, my name is James. I'm the producer of the show. I am also the one who does the Norse Code podcast Twitter account for all of your Viking snark needs.
Yeah, so he's the personality behind the Twitter account that you almost always block.
Exactly. That's actually my goal, is just to ride
the line.
Just to ride that line as fine as I can. Well, before we get started into the show and start talking all about training camp, we do have a couple things we want to point out. We are online at NorseCodePodcast.com. Dusty has that up again, finally. On the Norse Code Podcast website, you will find many things, including all of our episodes. You can also find the donate link under Become a Sponsor, and you can help donate to the show through here. We have two ways of doing it. You can become a monthly sponsor through Patreon, which is patreon.com/NorseCode. There's a link in here for that. You can also use the Donate Now section here to donate through Squarespace to help keep the show alive, keep the show going, because this show is brought to you by viewers like you. Much like Ghost Rider. Do you remember Ghost Rider in the 90s? Ghost Rider, or like a nice PBS show. We're not ad driven or anything. We just go straight through you guys. You guys have helped keep the show alive. You guys have helped the quality become much better in the last year. We put out 2 shows a week during the regular season, so we're gonna try to get a second show out here at the end of this week as well. So we appreciate all the attention you guys have given us, all the help. So we just want to try to keep the lights on. If you can spare Tree Fitty and help keep the Loch Ness Monster at bay, we really do appreciate it. Also, on the NorseCodePodcast.com website, you can click on the Norse Code merchandise and find Arif Hassan's Viking Training Camp Guide 2016. Arif, what makes this a fantastic purchase right now as we're like 4 days into training camp?
Yeah, so if you're you still haven't attended training camp yet, you want to attend training camp, there's like a whole week left. The first section of the notebook is entirely just about what drills to watch for and how to watch some of these drills, which ones are more meaningful, which ones are less meaningful. And that's going to be useful for the rest of training camp. And then for the rest of the year, training camp aside, if you've already gone, for the rest of the year, there's a lot of essays at the end about momentum and analytics, and there's a lot of explanation at the beginning, and pages of explanation about the way that the scheme works, the way that, Mike Zimmer defines the defense, the way that Norv Turner designs the offense, stuff like that. That's going to be, persistent throughout the year. You also may be becoming familiar with some of the names at the bottom of the roster. I've talked up Trey Roberson basically every opportunity I've had. Who the hell is he? Well, he's a quarterback from Illinois State. There's a scouting report on him in the guide. There's a scouting report on everybody in camp except for the Haitian defensive tackle that they, signed very, very recently. So, if there's a name that you're not familiar with, the guide almost certainly has an explanation of who they are and what they've done, as well as maybe a short history on, what their expectations are. So there's still, a lot of information that people really enjoy. And people are continuing to make purchases throughout camp. And they found it valuable. I've still gotten feedback saying that people enjoy reading it even after camp has started.
And at this point, if you want to buy it a couple of days later, you can just use this training camp guide and just pick out, Arif was wrong here, 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 and here. And he'll still take the money.
Very valuable. Very valuable.
He will still take the money. Arif is shameless. He will still take the money. I feel like that should be on a business card too. Arif is shameless. But yeah, again, go to the Norse Code Podcast website, take a look, see what we've got. Dusty also has been working overtime. He didn't sleep much a couple nights ago and decided to get a bunch of our episodes up on YouTube. So it's not in order because that's not how the import process works. Why would you do it in order?
Yeah, that would be silly. If you want to know what our Adrian Peterson takes were 2 years ago, they are near the top of the page. If you want to know, what we thought of Teddy Bridgewater 3 weeks ago, use the search function. We've got every episode of Norse Code that has been hosted on Libsyn, which goes back 2.5, 3 years,
something like that.
And Dusty did a very, very good job bringing all those episodes in. So definitely head over to the YouTube channel.
Yep. And if you find a section there that you want to share, you're more than welcome to go to the video itself, right click on it, and do the whole share this link at the current time. That way, if there's a particular take that's bad or good, you can share it that way, so people can just go directly to it. It's a good way to help share the show. We want people to listen to this as much as possible. So please go out, tell people about Norse Code, and send out the YouTube link, send out the Daily Norseman link, send out the Norse Code podcast link. Just help us out. We really need Tree Fitty.
Could really use Tree Fitty.
And speaking of Tree Fitty, let's talk about a couple of incoming donations. This will be real quick, but just wanted to thank a couple people here. AKK Pewter is somebody who helped donate to the show. His note is, to the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings from the #5 podcast sponsor from the British Isles, please accept my horribly depreciated currency.
Yeah, you can always rely on Norse Code for a little bit of Brexit humor. By the way, when we got this note, we looked up the current currency, the Great British Pound, because we were somewhat familiar with the fact that some economic indicators had recovered since Brexit. Turns out the Great British Pound, not one of them.
Not one of them, but we will still take your depreciated currency. Thank you,
really
Alex.
appreciate it.
Yes. And another note from a Patreon user was, thanks for bringing Arif's thoughts and insights to this displaced Minnesotan. And something interesting about the Tree Fitty monthly donation for the year is it is 42, which is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything.
I wish that was on purpose. It's kind of cool that that's how it works out.
It is cool how that works out. So long, and thanks for all the fish. Last thing before we get to the show itself, we are bringing back the Norse Code Fantasy Football League for another season. I have decided to wipe everyone from the show who is not or everyone from the
damn.
everyone's from the league. Everyone from the show. No one is safe. We're cleaning house here, people. Everyone from the league except for Dusty Arif and we are going to be doing a bit of a lottery system to get people into the league. As a reminder, this league is special in that if you miss an extra point, it's negative 25 points. I know that very well because I was the one who was affected the most by this rule. Arif as well. So,
yeah. I didn't have Blair Walsh, right? I had someone else.
You had somebody else. I had the fat kicker. I had Bullock to start the
Randy
league.
Bullock. He was so good 3 years ago.
He was so good 3 years ago. My idea of having a guy who was kicking in the AFC South in all those domes, yeah, totally not. It didn't matter.
You can miss extra points even then, huh?
You can definitely miss extra points then. So we will be doing that. If you'd like to be a part of that, you can message us at the Norse Code DN Twitter account. You can email us at norsecodepodcast@gmail.com. And you can harass Arif. Arif can get me the information. Just email address and name, and we'll put you into the hat. We'll pull out some names. So now that we have all of that taken care of, let's talk about training camp and Mike Zimmer, because Mike Zimmer got an extension right before training camp started.
Yeah, a well-deserved one, I think. It's kind of interesting because I remember back when Leslie Frazier made the playoffs in 2012, and the Vikings declined to extend it. They were in contract negotiations. The Vikings decided not to extend the contract and enacted an option in the contract to keep Frazier on for only one more year. Frazier's camp was not very happy about that. Turned out the Vikings made a great decision and were able to let go Frazier cleanly without having to owe him any more money. They're not Notre Dame and Charlie Weiss, so that helps.
Isn't Notre Dame still paying Charlie Weiss at this point?
Now, I think it's Charlie Weiss. Yes, they are. Quite a bit of money. Yeah, but they decided Mike Zimmer, a different brand of coach, he definitely deserved the extension, and it sounded like his contract wasn't going to be up at the end of 2017, so he didn't actually even get a standard 3-year coaching contract. He must have gotten a much longer contract, and they decided, we're just going to tear this up and give you a new one. He definitely deserves it.
I think it was just a bonus for keeping the Vikings out of the news over the past couple of months with drug charges, or what Trey Mason went through, or with just random.
Oh my God,
Trey Mason! You can call it saying I'm going to call the White House for no. They kept the Vikings out of the news for dumb things, and I feel like that accomplishment is huge. You get a contract extension when you pull that off, apparently.
Yeah, it's been a while since the Vikings were out of offseason. I don't remember a single offseason story. Like, the closest we can get is Jabari Price's DUI, which I think occurred before the new league year in March.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So that's it, right? We didn't have like a pound of weed mailed to a player.
Not this year.
Not this year. We didn't have.
Nobody beat their kids and was caught.
Right. Not this year.
No leaked pictures to TMZ there. No. It's been a nice and quiet off season as far as all that goes. It's
definitely unique.
It is unique. Maybe that's why everyone's so excited this year, because everyone seems to be on the same, everybody's on the same wavelength for discipline. Good for them. The big story coming out of training camp so far has been Adrian Peterson's hamstring. So this means he's going to retire, right? Like, this means he's done and he finally hit the 30 wall, right?
Yes, that is the ironclad correct interpretation.
It has to be. He's done.
He's just done.
So, and it's certainly not a case of a star player who doesn't want to do anything at training camp. Just, I stubbed my toe. I need to, not be doing these things for the next 2 days.
Literally everyone in camp was just like, yeah, if there was a game tomorrow, he'd be playing. So, whatever. Yeah, Adrian Peterson is being held out of practice because he ostensibly tweaked a hamstring. And he is totally fine. Whatever, man.
He's not going to have anything amputated. the next thing I was going to mention is something that's a little bit more serious. So Taylor Heineke showed up with with crutches and a cast. What was the story on this? Because it certainly came as a surprise to everyone in Vikings media.
Yeah. That was. I can't even.
This did not appear in the training camp guide. I'm just saying.
No. This was. I sadly failed to anticipate it. So. God damn. Okay, so ostensibly there was not any substance abuse of any kind, and nothing illegal occurred, and all that. But Taylor Heineke, a man of many friends, had one friend who was locked out of his apartment one night, maybe a week ago, I don't know. And they decided, he needed help getting into the apartment, which perfectly reasonable. Definitely need help getting into the apartment. The solution to this was to kick the door in. I've been in college. I've kicked in doors. I did it in high school. Some of my listeners actually knew me in high school, and they probably remember that story. And I understand that. The difference, of course, is that the door I kicked, doors plural, none of them were glass, and none of them shattered, because that is not a quality that wood has. Taylor Heineke, on the other hand, decided that, doors are doors, and kicking in a door, perfectly reasonable, would be the same no matter what. Not reasonable. Glass pane severed a tendon in his leg, and he's scooting around camp in his scooter.
Yeah, the scooter is quite the sight to see. And perhaps Taylor should have asked you for tips, because you sound like a professional door kicker. Maybe he needed to just call up a reef and say, "Listen, I got this door, right?"
Yeah, right. Well, I haven't trained the SWAT team in some time, but I could probably put on my instructor hat, let him know.
You're a useful human. You can help him figure this out. It'll be fine. So he is. How long is he looking to being out?
Oh, I have no idea. I think the prognostication from the media was 2 to 3 months, which, I mean, the fact that he's not cut, I think that tells you how much faith the Vikings have in him as a quarterback. So, maybe, they put him on IR and he's done. Maybe they pup him, which that would be fantastic, because I'm not a huge fan of the backup quarterback situation right now. If he's out for 6 weeks, returns to practice within 2 weeks of those 6 weeks, and is ready to play, halfway through the season, then you've got a reasonable backup quarterback who showed a lot of promise in the last preseason. So that might be the situation. Maybe he's out for the year. Maybe they just IR him. It's not as if another team can snag him off of waivers and put him on their roster. So putting him in IR would be pretty safe. And those are probably, the two options.
It's just too bad, because I remember last year, all three of us were just really high on Taylor. And it was just so nice to watch him and Diggs really connect. So it's too bad that he will be scooting around for the foreseeable future anyway.
Scooting. Yeah, that's too bad.
Scooting around. So let's talk training camp. Let's talk Teddy and the long ball. Lots and lots of deep bombs from Teddy this week.
Yeah, and more in the first 2 days than the second 2 days, as the defense was able to press and not give Teddy as many clean open looks deep downfield. But certainly we've seen a lot more deep passing from Bridgewater in this camp than we did in the previous two camps. I remember that we were hoping that Bridgewater would improve his deep ball in the previous two camps by pointing to some of the highlight plays that he had, but especially the first 2 days, but generally over camp, he's had a good number of very accurate deep passes that I think can give you some level of confidence. Now, this most recent day, so today for me, probably yesterday for listeners, it wasn't as great. He was a little bit off target after, getting, quote unquote sacked by Brian Robinson. And, he had to throw, off platform or whatever. So, not as good yesterday, but generally speaking, I think that we've seen a much more improved Bridgewater in terms of the deep ball. And, I don't know if we've seen enough to confidently say this will project into the regular season, but it's definitely positive.
Well, Zimmer had said something along the lines of, "We're only doing this right now so you writers can see that he does actually have this."
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
I was like, no, this is actually happening. Let's go through the QB stuff. Obviously, Taylor's not playing, and Teddy's throwing the long ball. What else is happening at quarterback out there?
I've been asked to break down the mechanics of Bridgewater, and in the process, I've also taken a look at the mechanics of Sean Hill and Joel Stavi. And a lot of people were talking about Bridgewater's mechanics. His release, I think it's quick. That's something that people were asking about, and I think that has quickened. Some people were talking about the elbow drop. Phil Simms mentioned it on Monday Night Football, and I was watching a preseason game to watch Taylor Heineke a while back, and I totally didn't remember this, but Mike Mayock actually mentioned the exact same thing of Bridgewater, the elbow drop, and so it's been a persistent problem. And he still sort of has it. It's not as bad as it was, especially in that Monday night game. It's not as bad as it was, but it's still something that, it changes from time to time. He doesn't have it on short and intermediate passes. He most often has it on deep passes, and, that'll turn on and off. We'll see. As for, Stavi and Hill, Hill actually, I'm surprised by this. He actually has really bad mechanics, and there's like a hitch in his motion, and he has to push the ball through. And you can see that with how much the ball like flutters like a duck in the air. And that's a problem. That's translating into an actual problem on the field in training camp. His passes are extremely slow, and they're not that accurate. He doesn't display the kind of timing that slow passers need in order to succeed. And I don't know that, even though Hill's familiar with the offense, even though he has anticipation and knows what he needs to do, he's a little bit too nervous in the pocket, a little bit too willing to run the ball, which is kind of weird given how slow he is, and not accurate enough to overcome some serious concerns. He's been picked nearly every day, or almost picked every day, including a near pick six by Jaron Kearse. Stavi is just bad. He has a phenomenal arm. He has the cleanest mechanics of any quarterback in camp. They're perfect. It's incredible. I wasn't expecting that. He's awful.
There was a Twitter comment today about Stavi's throw that one of them was so bad that it looked like it knocked a phone out of a reporter's hands or something like that.
No, that was Cardale Jones.
Oh, that's
over in Bill's camp. Yeah, but actually, kind of similar story. One of Stavi's passes was so off target that it flew over. I think it was Troy Stoudemire's head. I'm not entirely sure which player it was, but I think it may have flown over his head. And it landed on the sideline, and the ball took a funny bounce and jetted right into the Star Tribune video camera, which Sherry Strib was holding at the time. And at Sherry Strib, rather, not her name's not Sherry Strib, which at Sherry Strib was holding at the time. And she took it like a champ. She didn't fall over. Everything was fine. She was fine. But it was just like, yeah, this is Joel Stavi. And the thing is, his mechanics may be perfect. He may have this fantastic live arm, and he may be inaccurate, but sometimes the ball just flutters. Sometimes he throws the worst ducks in camp, which is pretty incredible given that he is the most consistent mechanically and has the best arm of any of the three quarterbacks, or four, actually, if you include Heineke. And he still sometimes just, this is the first time I've seen a ball go end over end coming out of a quarterback's hands. And I've seen, Joe Webb, I've seen Christian Ponder, I've seen Josh Freeman, I've seen
not even
bad
in
Brett
high
Favre.
school do you see that often. Jeez.
Yeah. I've never seen a ball go end over. I've seen a ball wobble in its spiral. Obviously, Peyton Manning was a genius at making the ball wobble while it spiraled, but I've never seen a ball flip as it was big. It looked like a punt. It looked like an Aussie-style punt. Jaron Kearse, by the way, he intercepted that, so good on him. But, yeah, it's just like... Stavi is just bad. I don't know how else to put it.
Well, we had a question from the mailbag that we can bring in here from Jeff McNamee, who asks, what are the chances that we can sign a decent backup QB? And if we do, whom do we sign? And what happens to Heineke when he returns?
That's a really good question, if only because, I don't know that if there aren't any backup quarterbacks in the market, Nick Foles. I don't know that they would want to sign with the Vikings because Teddy is very clearly the starter. Foles probably wants to compete for a starting job. Any quarterback that's going to be cut will have been cut for a reason, right? I mean, like, there's some quarterback rooms where maybe, that's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know what's going to happen with the Patriots. I don't know if they have someone behind Jimmy Garoppolo. They probably do, given that, Tom Brady can't play the first 4 games. But, maybe take a look at whoever the hell that's going to be. The Eagles are definitely going to cut someone. I think they're the ones that currently have McLeod, John Balthazar, Bethel Thompson.
Sure do.
Yeah, so... Oh, Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback behind Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, he's not going to get cut until 4 games into the season. But maybe him. So I genuinely believe that if you grabbed a quarterback who is not familiar with the system, just grabbed the next best available quarterback. Maybe that's Nick Foles, who I don't think he'll necessarily sign. Maybe he'll sign with the Cardinals because, their quarterback room behind Carson Palmer's a mess. I still don't think that would be a problem, the fact that they don't know the system at all. I feel like you would be better off. And remember, Josh Freeman demonstrated how bad it can be if you have a quarterback who is unfamiliar with the system, immediately go in. Having seen that game, I am still confident that the next best available quarterback is a better move than having Sean Hill.
That actually says quite a bit, actually. So let's talk running back. A lot of Matt Asiata out there the last couple days with Adrian,
especially yesterday, or especially today.
Yep, with Adrian out, and then with Jerick McKinnon getting tended to on the sideline.
Yeah, we still don't have clarity on the McKinnon situation. Luke Inman at Luke_Spinman. He overheard the trainer saying forearm to the head. He didn't know if it was a question or a discussion, like, oh, did you take a forearm to the head or whatever. But yeah, it's a head injury of some sort. Obviously, teams are much more sensitive to head injuries now than they were. I don't know what it is, but I mean, McKinnon, he's walking fine. He had a towel over his head. Possibility that a forearm hit him in the eye, which would obviously suck a lot. But my guess is that it is not a huge concern. He didn't walk back out, which is concerning. But my guess is it's not a big deal.
No. So how's Asiata looking out there? He's
looking like Asiata. He's making the right decisions, and he's not getting a ton out of it, but he's getting enough out of it,
he's getting his 3.5.
Yeah, he's getting his 3.5.
Good. He's going to score He's going to just score 3 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns a game or nothing. So we're just hoping for 3.5 from him. Wide receiver. We've had a lot of discussion online about our new wide receiver and about Diggs. How's everyone looking out there?
Diggs looks fantastic. And honest, I was actually kind of worried about Diggs going in because remember at the end of the season, he tailed off significantly. Like he had a fantastic middle of the season after he was named the starter. And then, and you probably remember this if you're a DFS player. I mean, he just fell off a cliff. Maybe as teams got more film, maybe, it's just a spike in statistics or whatever. Whatever the reason, he fell off. And so I was a little bit worried that we were kind of overrating him as the second best receiver coming out of the draft, right? Because he had the second most yards. And the good news is, he's looked fantastic. He's performed against every single cornerback that the Vikings have lined him up against. Which, that's all of them, right? That's like Terrence Newman, that's Xavier Rhodes, that's Captain Munnerlyn, that's Mackenzie Alexander, it's Trey Waynes. And he's performed against all of them. He's done a very good job. He finds ways to get open. He has an array of moves at the release and at the break, and he catches the ball. I haven't seen one drop from him at camp, and if there has been one or two, it's definitely been outside of the norm. So he's exceeded my expectations, which I admittedly were driven by worry, and so it's good. But the thing about Diggs is maybe exactly what you'd expect. We're not getting many highlight plays from him. We're not getting him breaking open deep on go or post routes. We're not getting him winning contested catches or anything like that. You're getting somewhere between Michael Crabtree and Antonio Brown. And I understand to a lot of people that's a huge gulf. That's not as huge a gulf to me because I really respect Michael Crabtree. But, you're getting an efficient route runner who doesn't necessarily, make big plays, but certainly helps the team. So somewhere in that spectrum, maybe it's at the Antonio Brown end, maybe it's the Michael Crabtree end. But you're getting a guy who will provide consistent gains and move the chains.
What about Treadwell? Does he have a fighting chance of making the starting roster?
Yeah, I think so, especially because Charles Johnson, he's been having a good 4 days, but I don't think Johnson hasn't had a big play in a little while, which I don't want to say that he's playing poorly because I think that he's playing great. And I think, I was talking to some fans afterwards and they thought he was playing poorly, yesterday. And again, yesterday for me, 2 days, probably for most of the listeners. And he didn't. He had like one drop on a contested catch, which is, that's Charles Johnson. That's who you're getting. But Treadwell, I think, I don't know, everything just seems to be caught up in him being a rookie. He's dropped a pass or multiple passes in every single day of practice so far. He lost a couple of contested catches, as of day 4, especially one notable one against Trey Waynes. And, in some of those situations, you want to blame the quarterback because in a game situation, be like, well, that's clearly the quarterback's fault. And it is. I mean, Sean Hill in this case definitely underthrew a pass. And Trey Waynes, to his credit, he was in good position and he was able to fight off Laquan Treadwell. But in terms of like projecting the kind of receiver that you want to see out of a first round pick, players like that and the players that you're trying to get will win those situations and save a bad pass for your quarterback. And he didn't do that in those situations. But on the other end, Treadwell has had some highlight plays. He's been up and down in every single day of camp. He's had some really, really good days. Or I shouldn't say good days. He's had some really, really good plays. That's maybe a better word. He's had some really good plays, and he's had some really poor plays. The first 2 days of camp, he was falling over in his routes and stuff like that. And I would say it's been more positive than negative, but until he sort of cleans those up, and I'm going to assume that they're focus related because it's not stuff we saw, when he was at Ole Miss. But until he cleans those up, Charles Johnson could and probably should have the starting job week 1.
The big news out of camp today was the fight that Treadwell had. Any insight on that?
Yeah, the coaches aren't worried, first of all. The coaches were just kind of standing there watching. It was happening like 3 feet from 2 of the coaches.
Be like, let them do this now. We'll deal with it later.
Yeah. And I think after practice, Mike Zimmer said, yeah, it's not going to happen during games, so, who cares? But yeah,
he's no Odell Beckham Jr. He's not going to just start throwing punches in the middle of the game.
He's not going to. No one's going to turn this into Andre Johnson, Cortland Finnegan. Still one of the most satisfying NFL fights in history.
It really is. Right around the time the helmet flies off and gets thrown 20 yards.
But yeah, Price had a little bit of after whistle shoving. Treadwell, who he's a physical player, I think is maybe the most generous way to put it. Didn't appreciate it, responded. Fists flew. I don't know, man. 6'2", 220-pound Treadwell against 5'9", 190-pound Price. I didn't really expect it to be much of but Price acquitted himself well, according to Luke. And Treadwell got frustrated enough he took Price to the ground. At which point other players started intervening. Coaches still didn't intervene. They're just let it happen. But yeah, and that was one of 2 fights that happened that day. There was maybe a less exciting fight between Emmanuel Lemur and I want to say Matt Asiata. That one was more pushing and shoving, and then we just had some chippiness throughout the day. Anton Exum laid a shoulder down on Jarius Wright at a point where probably didn't need to, and Jarius Wright kind of didn't expect it, and he went flying, and then I think it was Xavier Rhodes. I'm not sure if it was Xavier Rhodes or someone else, but Charles Johnson caught a pass, fell to the ground, and as he was getting up from the ground, the defensive back, I think it was Rhodes, pushed him down again. Which, defensive backs are the ones starting fights. So,
it turns out our defense has a chip on its shoulder. Who knew?
Yeah. They probably didn't like what happened the first 2 days, and they just wanted to get even.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's training camp. It's maybe it's not the Dallas Cowboys. It's not Tyler Patman demonstrating phenomenal fighting technique. It's just, people letting some steam off.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's talk about the line. How are our turnstiles doing? Are they still going to be letting everybody through?
Still trying to figure out Andre Smith. I really don't know what to make of him because on some days he locks down one player and gets burned by another player. On some days he completely dominates at the line of scrimmage, and on some days he's a little whatever, right? Matt Khalil, as soon as Mike Zimmer praised him, Matt Khalil's play fell off a cliff. Everson Griffin has been destroying him, and it's not just because it's Everson Griffin. I mean, when you watch, you can kind of tell, who's kind of at fault. And it's Mike Zimmer
for giving him any sort of praise.
Yeah, and you could clearly see the wheels turning in Matt Khalil's head with your X-ray vision.
Never encourage Matt Khalil. Got it.
But yeah, also Matt Khalil's been beaten by other defensive ends. Justin Tratto showed up pretty well against him too, so that's not great. On the inside of the line, we're still looking for clarity, but Alex Boone, supposed to be a savior, definitely looks like it. As much as you can have a savior on the offensive line, right? Like if someone's perfect, maybe it doesn't matter if 4 other people suck, right? Your offensive line still sucks. It's not like receivers, but Alex Boone is fantastic. I don't know how else to put it. Me and Daniel House over at Vikings Corner kind of disagree on Sullivan. I think Sullivan has largely looked good. Daniel doesn't think Sullivan has looked good. And I think the difference comes down to what we expect the role to be. I don't really expect John Sullivan to go one-on-one against any nose tackle. He never has. He never will. And he'll double team. And I think that within that context, he's performed well. He looks like his old self. And Linval Joseph, Linval Joseph is like eating his lunch a couple of times, but it's Linval Joseph and
Linval's hungry.
Linval eat. So, that doesn't bother me that much. Brandon Fusco, difficult to figure out. Has had some good days, has had some bad days. The backups, Joe Berger didn't look great in 11s today. Looked pretty good in 1-on-1s. And TJ Clemmings looked pretty good. Day 3 looked really bad day 4, which I think that's an improvement. As opposed to looking bad in every single snap, he looks pretty good in a good portion of a snap. So that's the state of the offensive line. Zach Kieran had a great day on day 3, terrible day on day 4. Same exact thing for Willie Beavers. Great day 3, bad day 4. So that's the update on the players that most people are familiar with on the offensive line.
Well, let's look at the defense real quick, and we have a question from Richard Snowden who asks, so far this week, which safeties are most likely to make the roster, and which do you want to make it?
Really seems like they're giving Michael Griffin every chance to make the roster. So it'd be Harrison Smith and Michael Griffin. Not necessarily starting. Anderson Dejo could be starting as well. Those 3 seem like they're very likely to make the roster. Aside from that, you're trying to figure out if it's Anton Exum, Jaron Curse, or Anthony Harris, because there's not that many safeties in camp. So those are the 6 that get the run. And I think Anton Exum is on sort of his last legs. I think that it's going to be very difficult for him to make the roster. I don't think that he's performed well in camp. I don't think that he's doing everything he needs to do. And he's getting priority over Jaron Curse, but at some point, that's just going to go away. And maybe we'll have to see game situations before something happens. But I think that he's most likely to be cut. And then if Michael Griffin makes the roster, you kind of have to choose between, Jaron Curse and Anthony Harris. I think both of them have looked really good. Curse, I think, has had better highlights. More, I think, is being asked of Harris. I don't think they've put Curse in man situations. They've put Harris in a lot of man situations. And so, Harris is going to look a little bit worse because he's a safety. But both of them look pretty good. And if I had to choose between the 2 of them, probably from a prediction standpoint, Jaron Curse. From a projection standpoint, from like what I want, I would probably take Anthony Harris, but I'd really just rather keep 5 at that point. I would not bring Michael Griffin on. So actually, I would keep 4. I would keep Sendejo for special teams, and because he's got a locked in money this year, Harrison Smith obviously, and Jaron Curson and Anthony Harris, and then cut Michael Griffin and Anton Exum. Maybe Exum's eligible for the practice squad. See if you can do that. But that would be who I want, and that's my prediction. And then also there's also in there my prediction of who it will be.
So how's Greenway and the linebacker core doing?
It's difficult to evaluate linebackers in camp. I think that Kendricks has struggled a little bit in coverage, which, that's not really what you expect. That's supposed to be his forte. He also struggled a little bit in coverage against in his rookie year. So, we'll see. Anthony Barr is Anthony Barr. Like I haven't seen anything worrisome from him. Chad Greenway had a couple of good plays. I don't know if I can evaluate any further than that. I haven't really been able to really evaluate Kentrell Brothers. I think Emmanuel Lemur looks pretty bad. He's missed some pretty big assignments, and he hasn't been able to use his length. I don't really have a read on Edmund Robinson, who the coaches praised yesterday. Audie Cole, don't have much of a read on him either. I mean, he had a nice interception the other day, but wasn't really against a quarterback, so I don't really want to count it.
Not really counting the interception that's not thrown by a quarterback?
Yeah, I think that's a little...
That might be just giving him a little optimistic. Bit too much slack. Okay. Well, let's talk corners before we hit the mailbag. How are our corners looking? How's Trey Waynes?
Going into camp, you were like, hey, these 5 corners, that's pretty good stuff. Trey Waynes finished the year really strong. Mackenzie Alexander is supposed to be a first-round pick. Then you've got 3 starters who all played pretty well. Captain Munnerlyn played really well for the Vikings. Xavier Rhodes is Xavier Rhodes. And Terrence Newman, I think, sort of exceeded the expectations of his age. Played pretty well. Camp, not quite as much. Xavier Rhodes had a bad first day. I think he's been all right since then. Captain Munnerlyn has looked okay. He had a highlight play earlier, which was nice. But Terrence Newman has looked not great. He's been beaten deep. The nice thing is that he never seems to be beaten twice by the same move or the same route, which is cool. But, it's not like there's a checklist and people are going to run out of ways to beat him. They keep beating him in different ways. And that's not great. Trey Waynes is really off and on. Day 2 he looked awful. Day 3 he looked pretty good. This last training camp day he looked not great. So it's kind of difficult to tell sort of where he's at or how he's doing. And there's some worry there, right? Because you want that cornerback spot, clamped down. I don't think Mackenzie Alexander has looked good at all either. And that may be because he's learning the nickel position, he's learning a new defense, and he's getting some confusion in coverage. And I don't know. To me, there's a good probability that if you've got 3 question marks, one of them is probably pretty good, right? So it's not a huge long-term or short-term concern for me, but that's what I'm seeing. So there's that, and then all the other people on the roster, Marcus Sherrills, I haven't really watched him in coverage because, who cares? That's not his job, and eventually if it is his job, no matter how technique sound he plays, he's 5'8", so it doesn't really matter.
he's a 5'8" corner who returns kicks. We're good with one of these 2 things.
Yeah. Melvin White is bad. Trey Roberson is surprisingly good, but he played quarterback last year for Illinois State, so I don't really know how much you can project, but he's played pretty well. And that's it. Keith Baxter got cut after a non-football injury that landed him in the hospital, which sucks because I only identified 3 undrafted free agents to potentially make the practice squad, and he was one of them. But he never showed up in camp, so never you mind.
Damn shame. So, any battles we should be paying particular attention to, like at punter or anything like that?
Yeah, the Vikings just got rid of 2 players. Jason Whittingham sounds like he just quit football, which is fine. He wasn't getting any reps, so I can see why he did it. Keith Baxter was just cut. So there's 2 more spaces. They could bring a punter in, but for now it sounds like they won't. The safety battle is going to be super interesting. I think the Vikings are giving presumption to Trey Waynes at the cornerback position. I think we're going to see a lot of Michael Griffin on the first team at safety, along with Andrew Sendeo, just to see if Michael Griffin still has it. And then finally, we'll see some rotation with Exum, Harris, and Curse. Hopefully more Harris and Curse, because they've been phenomenal, but they've been playing against Joel Stabby. So That's interesting.
Stats are slightly inflated at that point.
Yeah, no, I think maybe I want to count for the quality of competition. At linebacker, doesn't seem like there's a lot of rotation happening up at Chad Greenway's spot. It sounds like he's locking that one down. And then Danielle Hunter, Brian Robinson, that's becoming more of a battle than I expected. I kind of expected the coaches to give deference to Robinson because I thought, I don't want to say Hunter's rookie season was overrated, but I think that fans were giving him too much credit for it relative to how it impacts, his position on the roster because situational pass rushers can look good and they still won't necessarily win the starting job from a veteran who also, does his job pretty well. So I didn't expect it, but Danielle Hunter's getting a lot of rotation in the first team. Brian Robinson is not looking, rock solid in camp. I mean, he had a pretty good showing today, so maybe that's not quite true. But that's a position battle worth noting. Until Treadwell fixes the focus things, it sounds like he's not going to be on the first team. It'll be interesting to see if Adam Thielen maintains a spot with the starting 3 receivers in 11 personnel. And I don't anticipate Clemmings winning the right tackle job or Birchall winning the center job.
Clemmings is, I was reading that Clemmings was just having all sorts of problems, just letting everybody through today.
Yeah, I mean, which sucks because yesterday he did all right. Today he lost to Hunter, obviously. It's not even a question that he was going to lose to Hunter. He lost to Robinson. He lost to Scott Crichton, and he lost to Zach Moore. So not a ton of opportunities for Zach Moore or Scott Crichton to rush from the edge, but Clemmings let them make the most of it, I guess.
That's mighty sporting of him to just let them have a chance. It's not that he's bad at what he does. He's just giving.
He's just
them
a generous soul. Yeah,
exactly. Well, let's hit up the mailbag, and the first question actually comes from Vikings territory, who asks the most impressive rookie in camp so far, not named Treadwell.
Well, it's definitely not Mackenzie Alexander. I haven't seen enough of Cantrell Brothers to say anything, but he's remained on the third team. It would have been really nice to say Willie Beavers if it wasn't for his performance today. I mean, yesterday he was great. Day 4 he was not. Going down the list, it has to be Jaron Kearse. Stephen Weatherly hasn't been bad, but he hasn't been great. Moritz, I think everyone's talking about him being poor. I think maybe that's a little inflated, but he's definitely not playing well. So it's got to be Jaron Kearse because I don't want to say it's Trey Roberson. I don't want to say it's any of the undrafted free agent rookies like C.J. Ham or Jarrell Presley or anything like that. So, yeah, 7th round pick is the most impressive rookie.
That's not named Treadwell. That works. Next question is from fake Tyler Larson, who says the player that stood out the most.
Like probably besides Teddy. Diggs might be the best performing offensive player that's not Teddy, but he doesn't stand out. So it's like like I was talking about earlier in the show. I mean, he's just doing like the consistent stuff that you want sort of your possession route runnery type dudes to do. So there's that. Rhodes hasn't stood out. Waynes, Newman. I think the guy that surprised me, I think Zach Moore's played well. Trey Roberson, like I said, played well. I know Linval. I just love watching Linval. He eats people.
One. Next question is from Chesil, who asks, any chance of Vikings starting Diggs at the slot with Treadwell and Charlie Johnson on the outside?
Really good chance. No, I think that, that's, I wouldn't call it the odds-on favorite. That's, at this point, it might be Thielen on the outside with Diggs in the slot or vice versa because they do switch it up a lot. But, it's the second most likely scenario and it's not too far from the first most likely scenario, which is the status quo. So, yeah, no, there's a huge chance of that.
Next question goes to Judd Zulgad's Hoodie, who's got a couple, who asks, are they planning a memorial for the fence? For those who do not know what that means, last year there was a tragic incident involving a fence getting knocked over, and was it driven over? Is that what happened?
It was driven over by the scissor lifts that have the practice film.
Damn shame. So there's obviously no memorial this year. It's too bad.
Well, I think maybe the 15-year anniversary they might.
We'll talk about it. Yeah, we'll talk about it in 2030. It'll be fine. Is the Pokemon Go hunting as good in Mankato, or does it lack the diversity of the Twin Cities?
Well, I mean, I haven't been to a lot of areas of Mankato, so maybe it would be unfair for me to say it, but it is trash.
Let's just be honest here. Let's just throw out any sort of just nicety here. Trash. 100% steaming trash. Stinks on
Yeah,
ice.
I guess, I mean, there's a slightly higher density of, like, Bellsprouts, which I haven't had a ton of, and, actually just Bellsprouts. Everything, that I found in Mankato, I found in Minneapolis. But I will say, someone tweeted at me before I went to camp, they had a lot of Pokestops on campus. That dude was not lying. There's a lot of Pokestops. The media room has 2. If you just sit down, you've got 2 within range, and a third if you just take a couple of steps outside of it. So, I mean, that's great. But the Pokemoning itself is not subpar. I mean, it's much better than most of Minnesota. But I'm just spoiled up here in Minneapolis.
Clearly. Next question is actually for me. Are you concerned Arif is cheating on you with the Andy Carlson show, Luke Spinman, and Cold Omaha? Boy, I don't know. This question actually hasn't been asked of me, and the football about the football machine or anything like that. No, I am not concerned with Arif cheating on me with the other shows. Actually,
wow, that's exactly what a jealous lover would say.
That's exactly what a jealous lover would say. Well, when you have a useful human such as Arif as your partner in this, it feels difficult to cage them. You gotta let them spread their wings. You knew what you were getting into when you signed up to do a podcast with Arif Hassan.
I appreciate that. I feel very Maya Angelou.
That's exactly the thing I was trying to go for, right? Right. Matt Nelson. Hey, here's a good question. Matt Nelson asks, when can we expect a Arif sit-down interview with Chad Greenway, and will there be video? There better be video.
I've been trying to get it every year. We'll see.
We've been pushing for it, especially last year. We made the push for it. So we made a pretty concerted push for it last year. No, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Greenway goes out of his way like every practice to find me and say hello, and I'm pretty confident it's like it's mostly sarcastic, but it's been pretty fun. Any idea how long Mike Harris is going to be out, and should we worry about the sudden lack of depth after the retirement?
Yes, but to the second question, which is weird because people are talking about all the depth along the offensive line, and it's good depth if you consider the fact that Clemmings wouldn't necessarily have to play this year. You'd have a pretty good backup at right tackle. You have a great backup at center and guard in Joe Berger. And then you've got someone like Mike Harris. And that's great depth. And then you've got Clemmings behind all of them, which, I mean, that's fine. But with Harris and Lodeholt gone, then all you really have is an answer at center and or guard, but both. Or so I guess just or guard. Okay, got to use and or more judiciously. That's a problem. I'm a little bit more impressed with Kieran, so you do have that, which is nice. And Kieran's listed as a guard. He's taken all of his snaps at guard in camp, but he can play center. He's played center for the Vikings the last 2 years, played center, I believe, 4 years at Toledo. So you do have Kieran, which is nice, but I think the tackle depth is pretty wanting. As for the first question, I have heard a lot of details about the Mike Harris stuff that I can't report, but I can say it's concerning, and my guess is that it's long-term. I know the Daily Norseman said that, Mike Harris could be out for the year, which is something that kind of slipped out of a presser or an interview with Mike Harris. I don't know. It's scary stuff, but I just I don't have enough sources to say it's the thing that I heard it was. So it feels like it's going to be long term.
Next question from Matt Nelson is, how has Kendricks grown other than just settling down?
I don't really know how to answer this because linebackers are difficult to evaluate in camp with the angles that we have. If I had sort of the top-down angle of the film from the scissor lifts, it would be a lot easier to answer this question, but I don't. So, yeah, I would say he's probably just becoming more familiar with what's asked of him in coverage because it's a complicated scheme. He's a better pass rusher probably than what we saw last year, but, I mean, there's just not a lot of definitiveness in this kind of evaluation.
I mean, you can't just go up to the Vikings and ask them for the scissor lift stuff. Be like, listen, I'm not going to share it with anybody. I just want to see how the linebackers are developing.
No, I suspect they would not respond well to that.
Damn shame. Last question is from Jesse Silva, who asks, is Teddy just going through the motions, trying to be mistake-free, or are the mistakes because he's seeing what he can do?
Well, definitely the second. I don't think it's particularly close. I think that Bridgewater is I don't want to say pushing the envelope, but sort of testing what he can and cannot do. He's still, I mean, so elite quarterbacks approach training camp a lot differently than good quarterbacks or average quarterbacks or poor quarterbacks. So like Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady will intentionally make a lot of mistakes in camp to see what they can do. And that would be pushing the envelope. And Bridgewater's not doing that. He is taking what the defense gives him. Like he's just practicing, responding to defensive looks and throwing the ball in response to that, which is fine because he just needs to grow generally as a quarterback. But I don't think that he's shying away from deep shots. I don't think that he's shying away from difficult shots. I think that he's just doing stuff and doing stuff that he would do in games. Maybe I would argue he's playing more aggressively than he did last year, which is what fans wanted to see. I think that he's making very few mistakes in that regard. Earlier today, I thought, he had a bunch of problems, but by the end of the day, he was playing, efficiently and pretty well.
That's a positive. And that is going to be the end of the show. I survived. No deaths.
You made it.
Everybody lives. It was fantastic. That is going to be it for the show. If you've heard value in what you've listened to, you can donate to the show in a couple different ways. You can go to NorseCodePodcast.com. You can click on the little link and go to become a sponsor. There's a couple different ways to becoming a sponsor. You can go to patreon.com/NorseCode. You can donate there. It's a monthly sustaining membership. You can also click on the little donate button here, donate now, and you can just donate here through Treefitty or whatever you would like to help out the show. It really does end up helping. The microphones this year have been fantastic. The storage space that we have up on Libsyn has been great. The new website we've pulled out is really nice. So
the MiFi has been clutch. You guys have no idea.
Yeah, this year we wanted to make sure that Arif had a MiFi for the training camp shows. This is really, really helping. So again, we really appreciate the help here. So anything you want to help out with, we really do appreciate. And you can listen to us at thedailynorseman.com, NorseCodePodcast.com. We are on iTunes as well as Stitcher and all sorts of radio apps. Anything you would like to plug before we go?
Not particularly. I've got notebooks gone up for every single day at coldomaha.com. We've got video content with me and Luke, or me and Luke and Daniel House. That's the most recent video. I mean, there's a couple of articles that are not notebooks. A piece on what Zimmer's had to say about the offensive line, a piece on another one of the players, and I'm probably going to get another piece up soon, hopefully about Troy Roberson. So. That's it. I've got almost all my content at coldomaha.com right now. Just head over there.
Excellent. You can follow us at NorseCodeDN on Twitter. You can follow Arif at Arif Hassan NFL. You can follow Dusty, who should be back next week, at Dusty O'Connell. For Dusty, for Arif, for myself, my name is James. Thank you for listening. We're hoping to have one more show by the end of the week to discuss the rest of training camp. But for now, our formula is keep Teddy alive. Should see you later this week.
Norse Code is the official podcast of the Daily Norseman SB Nation blog and is produced with cooperation from Pompous Jerk Productions. Pompous Jerk Productions. Attitude. with attitude. The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of their contributors and do not reflect official positions of the Minnesota Vikings, SB Nation, the Daily Norseman staff, or PJP. No information in this podcast should be construed as gambling advice. Please obey all local gaming laws.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.